All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Let's get the ball rolling here on our transaction one. How are we doing today?
Good.
Thank you for being on time, Kiko and Teresa and Mika.
Thank you.
So in our discussion so far, correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about the listing side. Still correct?
Correct.
And we were just about to flow into our listing presentation.
Awesome.
Does anyone have any experience with listings yet?
Not yet.
Not
Okay.
yet. Not yet.
Okay. Has anyone sold a house before?
Not yet.
I think both Kiko and Teresa are in contract right now. Teresa, this is your second or third one?
Second.
Second one, okay. And Kiko, you're in your first, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And Mika, are you just getting started also?
I just received the license from a department of real estate. So
Congratulations.
thank you for having me. I really appreciate your kindness. Thank
No
you.
problem.
Oh, welcome to the
And
club.
you live in Southern California?
Yes, yes, Southern California, Huntington Beach area.
Have you joined an office yet?
I did. Keller Williams in Huntington Beach.
Okay, great.
Love it.
Good. I was
Very
going to
good,
point
very
you in the
good.
right direction if you needed it.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So people are in transactions, we're saying, so we do have some transactional experience, but our transactional experience is on the buyer side, right? But that's good though too, because we see the other perspective, right? We see what the other side experiences and goes through. What do you guys think is important to home sellers?
Top dollar and selling fast.
Right, the money and the time frame it takes to get the house sold. Very important thing. Definitely going to have to. Anything else?
I've noticed a lot of contingent on finding a replacement property.
Where have you seen those? Has it been in our area or has it been out of the area?
That's been in Hayward.
Interesting. Okay. Definitely a concern for a seller, right? Where am I going to go? What happens
Right.
if I sell my home and I have no place to go? That's definitely something you want to. We're going to want to address. Just bear with me just 1 second. I need to grab a pen. So 1 second. Brainstorming. You're thinking about what things are important to sellers. I'll be back in like 30 seconds. Oh, never mind. Even faster than that. Funny, you get up from behind the computer screen and voila, there's a whole bag of pens. All right, cool. I want to make sure that I don't skip anything and that we touch on everything. So we
Another
touched on
thing
price, we touched on time.
Yeah,
What else is
time or
important?
timing, because sometimes they need to buy something else. And so they get really worried about what if I can't find anything? What am I going to do if I'm homeless? We have so little inventory right now that a lot of times it develops what we call a bottleneck, because we've got sellers who want to sell, but they're afraid they can't find anything. And so they aren't, and so they're not trying to sell unless they find something, which means they have to write a contingent offer, which means they're probably not going to get it. So
Makes it more challenging. Makes it more challenging.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
timing,
Contingencies on both sides, right?
yeah, timing for sure. What if I'm going to be homeless? What am I going to do?
There's an old agent. He's so old that my father-in-law, it was his mentor, a gentleman out of Oakland named Harry Murray. And he is a veteran listing specialist. And what my father-in-law told me Harry would do is he'd be in the living room trying to convince people to list their home. And that was the objection they brought up. Well, where are we going to go? And Harry would stand up and go to the living room window and open the curtains and look outside. He'd say, do you guys see any homeless people on the street? And at that time, there were none. So I was like, no. So, see, there's no homeless people. We'll find you a place to live. You don't have to worry about it. We'll find you a place to live. And that's it. What solutions, are there any other solutions we can think of that could maybe help the seller achieve those goals of having some security or some time to find a place to live without having the negativity necessarily of a contingency to buy? Because I mean, if I was a hot to go buyer ready to overpay for a house, I wouldn't want to overpay and then have to wait for this guy to find another place, right? If I'm overpaying, I want my house now.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the thing that you lose. You lose the guy that's going to overpay. Is that what you want to do, Mr. Seller? So there are other solutions out there. What do you guys think that could be?
A bridge loan if they can qualify.
There's bridge loans that they could do. That's one solution that helps them get the money to buy their house before their sells, if that's a solution. What else? I know you guys are working with buyers, and if you're making offers, it's probably one of the first questions you ask about outside of price.
What's the reason why they're moving?
Well, that's a question that a lot of people ask, but that's not necessarily the solution to how to get a seller out of a house or convince them to list their house without having a place to go yet.
Sure. Right.
Right? We talk about, well, outside of price, what else do you want? What other things are there outside of price, right? We have contingencies, right? Who's going to take the liability or the risk for the different factors that go on during the transaction? And then possession, right? When is the buyer going to take possession of the property? First question, does the seller live there? The seller lives there. It's like, well, is the seller going to leave before the close of escrow? And in most cases, if a seller occupies the property, they may not be ready to leave on the close of escrow. Now, how long they stay after close of escrow, that's the negotiating point, right? Do they need 3 to 5 days? Do they need 30 days? Do they need 60 days, 90 days? Right? So another solution to that contingency is we can negotiate a rent back to allow the seller to stay in the home after close of escrow. The good thing about that is when you close escrow, you get your money. And when you have your money in hand, I'm not talking about our commission, I'm talking about the seller. The seller is getting all his money, so that when the seller gets their money, then they can aggressively go after their next property without any reservations, and they have their cash in hand so that they can be as aggressive as humanly possible. You have the cash in hand and you have the motivation, you'll take the necessary steps to win in our competitive markets. Without that motivation, I would argue that the buyers are half-stepping at properties. And if you half-step at a property with competition, you're not going to win. You have to come full force, like you really, really want it. You're going to close. All right. What else, guys? What else? What are the things or factors when selling a home that a seller is going to need to understand before listing their property? See, what I'm trying to get at is a list of items that we need to be prepared for so that when we go to our listing presentation, we're able to present our services as a solution and then anticipate any of the seller's wants, needs, or desires so that we can have the best answers that we can convince them to list with us at that time. So when we go through our listing presentation, right, there's going to be points that we need to hit. So we need to make sure that we hit those hot points for the seller. So let's make our list. What else, you guys? What else do you think is a hot point for the seller?
They want low commission.
Absolutely. The commission, I would argue that to their bottom line as well, right? What's the bottom line for the seller? How much money are they going to walk away with? Anything else?
It would be what would go into getting the property prepared for sale.
Yeah, prepping the house for sale.
So what are some things that we do, you guys, to get it prepared?
Inspections?
Yeah, inspections, possibly some cleanup. For definitely
Staging?
yeah, stage, possibly full staging, partial staging, cleanup, definitely photography as well. Maybe some landscaping goes along in that category too.
Curb appeal, right?
it can depend. You know, we have Keller offers now that helps with all levels of getting a property prepared, because it can be as little as maybe just cleanup or some paint, and it could be like kitchen remodel, bathroom remodel. So it can be
Mhm.
big ticket items that you could talk to your sellers about that could help them increase the cost, or not the cost, well, increase the price that they're going to receive.
Absolutely. Our offers is an absolute game changer for us.
Yeah.
So it's definitely good to touch on.
So when you think about your value proposition and think about what you're doing as a listing agent, it's all the things that you do to help the seller get prepared. All the things, and some of that obviously is pricing, what the comps are, talking to them about their property compared to others, but it's also all those things you do. There's actually more work involved in getting a listing ready. The majority of the work happens before it goes on the market. And then once it's on the market, especially in our area, because we do disclosures ahead of time. We do, for the most part, I'm going to say 90% of the time, disclosures are up front. And just by the way, that's not necessarily the case everywhere. I've seen agents who are newer go farther out to gain business, whether it's the Central Valley or, you know, farther away, and they're like, oh my gosh, they didn't even have disclosures up front or inspections up front. And it's like, well, it's not a requirement. That's just the common practice that we have around here that we do, because our properties go so quick. You want to have everything done and up front so that you can have a smooth transaction. And that's part of what we would do around here as a listing agent, is make sure what I always say in my listing appointments is I want to make sure there's hardly anything that the buyer can negotiate. I want everything done up front so that we have a really solid buyer and very smooth transaction. But that doesn't necessarily happen in other areas where the markets aren't quite as quick as ours, or when the markets turn and the times slow down, because right now we're in a very fast seller's market, but that's not going to last forever. When the markets slow down, Mark and I have been in the business long enough. Mark, I remember when we never did inspections ahead of time. There was a time in my career, you guys, maybe a few times where the inspections and the buyers always paid for them. And it's
a little, it was 50-50. When I started in 02, 03, it was already a trend that the sellers would provide upfront inspections, because right into 04, 05, the market just took off and was just super hot.
Yeah.
And
then
every area is going to be different if we're talking about different parts of the country. So in some parts of the country, you can list a house and nobody's even going to show up to see it, much less buy it for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's going to take maybe 6-8 months to sell that house. And are those inspections that are 8 months old, when the buyer finally comes, are they even valid?
Yeah.
You have to do them again anyway. So I can see how in other parts of the country, talking to real estate agents, you tell them about pre-listing inspections, they go, no, we never do those. It's understandable because it takes them so long to sell a house. In our area where the demand is so strong, it's very important to lock down our buyers so that their buyers get a clear picture and an understanding of the house. And then we want to lock them down so we take their deposit as soon as possible. In order to do that, we have to facilitate a very clear picture about the property. And since we anticipate the property to sell within 7, 10, 14 days, the listing inspections are going to be very valid. They're going to be fresh and new. So in our area, it's the seller's best interest to pay for and have those inspections up front. And in our listing presentation, it's definitely something that we're going to have to address. So it's important that you guys have the right verbiage to be able to convince your seller that it's in their best interest. It's very important for them to take on the responsibility and provide those inspections. Any idea how to do that? Any scripts? Have you guys come across anything before I give it away? How do you get a seller to pay for the inspection? Well, in order to get someone to do anything, you have to show them what's in it for them, right? What's the benefit to the seller for providing those inspections up front? Number one, the benefit is liabilities, right? We want to give the buyer the best understanding of the condition of the home so that later on, they don't come back to you, Mr. Seller, and say, hey, buddy, you didn't tell me everything about this property. You made me spend $1 million. This place is full of rats or whatever, right? You want to buy, you want to verify the condition of the property. So that's one benefit to the seller, the professional inspections. You have the seller's word, then you have an inspector that came through and verified the condition of the home. The second benefit to the seller is during the transaction, that you don't have to renegotiate repairs in the middle of the transaction. See, in our area, because demand is so high, we're going to hopefully be negotiating with multiple buyers when we first come on the market. When negotiating with multiple buyers, those buyers will accept anything you give them for the most part, within reason, right? But more than likely, they'll take all the information from the seller and accept the condition of the property for what it is, and then make their best offer. And because the condition of the property is so clear, that buyer can then be confident and make an offer without that contingency if they want to be more aggressive. If you don't have those professional inspections, it's almost impossible. It's happened. It scares the crap out of me because it happens. But it's challenging to convince a buyer to forego a contingency without having at least some form of professional inspector come through and validate the condition of the home. So when we work with multiple buyers, we get to have the information up front. Chances are they'll accept the condition of the home as it is. If we let the buyers run those inspections during our contract period, well, what happens is the buyers view the cost of these inspections, number one, as an investment. They're looking to make their money back. So I guarantee you they're going to be coming and asking for something 100%. You don't have to give it to them, but nevertheless, understand that there's going to be another round of negotiation. The dollar value for that second round of negotiation is going to be much higher than the cost of these inspections, right? The inspections are going to be about $1,000, $2,000, $1,200 to $1,500. And if the buyer is going to make a repair request from your seller, it's probably going to start in the $3,000 to $5,000 range. So to avoid that, we provide those inspections up front so that they take it, right? And again, if the buyer takes those inspections without the seller's previous validation, the buyer may still do it, but if the inspector finds the same things that the previous inspector found, they're not going to ask you for any consideration for those items. So your second round of negotiation basically goes away if you have a good job of providing upfront inspections. Those are the two main benefits. Can anybody think of any other benefits to the seller for providing those inspections upfront? Or is that it? Is that enough?
I think Laura mentioned previously that you get to control the process because it's your inspector.
Yeah, that too. That too.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know any the inspectors these days, just like appraisers these days, are trying to take the ultimate third-party line in most cases. So they're going to say, well, I'm not going to say there's something wrong when there's nothing wrong. And I can't not disclose something that is wrong and tell them that it's right, right? So no matter what, the inspector has to have their integrity.
I've definitely had like inspectors that, boy, I've had them. I love the ones that I love that do a great job of pointing everything out that's wrong, because legally that's their job, but also not alarming anyone. You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, what kind of fix is this? Is this a $5 fix that you can do yourself at Home Depot? And so I love inspectors that do a very thorough job, but are not alarmists that scare everybody. And I definitely remove the inspectors off my list that are alarmists. Same with pest inspectors, and then even like roofing, all of them, roofing contractors, all those people that you'll know, the ones that you're going to get a really good bid from that are not ridiculously expensive. And if you leave it up to the buyer to do some of that, and their realtor knows what they're doing, they're going to pick the most expensive roofer out there. And then you're stuck with that bid as one of the bids that's out there that's way more expensive than a middle of the road bid. I'm not saying you pick the worst roofer out there that's going to underbid a job and do a terrible job or charge more because, oh my gosh, it turned out it's more expensive than their bid, because that kind of thing can happen too. But you definitely are going to end up having your favorite contractors out there who you know are trustworthy, thorough, and not alarmist, and and are fair in their pricing too.
And over time, you'll know who's who and who's what.
Yeah.
Like there's foundation guys out there that I know just gouge. And even if I get one of their inspectors from a buyer, I'm like, you don't even come with me with those numbers. I
Yeah.
already know these guys are 30% high,
They're going to ruin the deal every time.
right? So what they're like, you know, sometimes they're thinking they're helping their buyer, giving them negotiating power, whatnot. Doesn't matter.
That's why it's great to
At the end of the day, I mean, we're working for our sellers. And just the last thing on these inspections, guys, if those inspectors find something that could be of material benefit to your seller to fix, that will put a lot more money in their pockets, then do it, right? If the bathrooms are old and they're safe, it's okay. But if they're old and they're rotten, right? The inspectors are going to call it out. Either your inspector will or the buyer's inspector will later. There's no getting around it. It's rotten. If it happens later, you're going to pay through the nose and not receive any benefit. Does that make sense? If the buyer's inspector determines a bathroom floor to be rotten, it's like a $3,000 to $5,000 expense, and they're going to come at you for that money. Okay. Conversely, if we have the inspection done ahead of time, and the inspector finds out, hey, the floor is rotten in this bathroom. The bathroom needs to be gutted and remodeled. It's going to cost $5,000. Well, gut and remodel that bathroom, because guess what? When you sell it, you're going to get $15,000, $20,000 more, because on the market you have a beautiful home with a beautiful new bathroom, right? But you don't know that unless you invite the inspector out so he can do his determinations. So it's important to have those things done up front, so that way, if the seller can maximize their returns and minimize their headaches. All right, guys, what else besides inspections? What else do we need to talk about with our sellers? What's important for them to know? How about showing the home process? Showing the home process.
Put valuables away if they're living in the property?
Absolutely. What do you do with your goodies? What do we do with our goodies? You can take them to a friend's house. That's the best thing to do, or a relative's that's nearby. If you have a nice collection of expensive jewelry, probably a good idea to take them out of the house if you can. Otherwise, put them in a safe if you have.
Yeah.
If you don't have a safe and you don't have a safe place to go, obviously don't leave them in a jewelry box on the stand so someone can easily access it, right? I always recommend taking all personal items. You can get a nice box at the U-Haul place, and you can put your valuable items in a box and slide that box under the bed. There's no reason for anybody to be sliding out a box from under the bed. But they will open the closet doors. They will open the vanities. They will open your medicine cabinets, and they'll look through. They're not really looking to see if you have things that they steal. They're looking for space. But if they have a nice bottle of Vicodin and they're a drug addict, they're going to take it.
Yeah.
So you guys have to be sure that you're diligent and make sure prescription medications and jewelry are secured and not stored or obviously publicly displayed, or be, stored in an appropriate, safe place where a buyer should not be rummaging or looking. Under the bed's a good spot. And then the showing process. Should the sellers be there when the buyers come through with their agents? Are we going to be there when the house is being shown? And guys, this is going to vary area by area, expectation by expectation, market segment by market segment. If we're in San Francisco, the expectation is the listing agent to be present. If we're in San Mateo or Santa Clara, then the expectation is for nobody except for the buyer's agent and the buyers to be present. So know your area, know the process for that area. But most of the valleys, they behave similarly. San Francisco is different. Just leave it at that. Any other things that we need to discuss with our seller?
Marketing plan?
Marketing plan. How are you going to bring buyers to the door?
Exactly.
What's the most important part of the marketing plan? What's your greatest tool to bring people to the door? So,
MLS
Social
that's
media.
the place. The MLS is the place. Yes.
plus IDX.
MLS IDX, that's the place. Yeah. But what is the thing? What is the factor that brings the people? Makes the phone
Social
ring?
media. Social
Media?
media, Facebook.
That's also a place.
Visual appeal, photos.
Visual appeal is good.
Inviting the neighbors, walking around, maybe.
Door knocking in the neighborhood. Yeah, those are all great marketing tools. But we're still missing the most, well, we talked about it as a factor that we have to discuss already. But your greatest asset or your greatest tool to bring people to the door is the price of the house.
Right.
The price of the house is 90% of it. If there's problems with the condition, they can all be solved with price. But a price problem may not necessarily be able to be solved with condition. It doesn't work the other way around. So your marketing plan is going to be heavily revolving around the price. How do things behave these days? I mean, how does the process typically work as far as marketing the properties go? How do we get the word out to people that the house is for sale, period? Right, we go to our marketing meetings. We have our listing club Monday morning, of course. We announce to our peers. But typically, right, it's the MLS. We put the house on the MLS. And the way the MLS behaves is it then places ads all over the internet, right? Do it that way. It propagates to every real estate agent's website, propagates to all the major portals. Kevin, please.
Yeah, I had a good question. On the do not show for the coming soon, I saw that some listings can have like 1 or 2 pictures, but when I try to put a picture up, it doesn't allow me. Is there a
And I have no idea, beyond my scope of expertise.
Okay, I'm gonna ask somebody.
Yeah, there should be, you should be able to put up at least one picture, or as many as you can. No?
Yeah, it's not showing. I put it up there. It's not showing. So I'll
Oh, you put it up, but it's not showing. Sometimes it takes 30 minutes for them to catch it. Throw it up there.
It's been like a day.
So sometimes it happens
Call the
instantly, sometimes it
MLS.
takes a little bit.
Yeah, I'll call.
Call MLS listings and to tech support, and they'll help you figure it out.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. Where are we talking about disclosure? Talking about pricing, right? So you put the pricing, you put the property on the MLS and then it propagates out, right? Through all the websites and portals. It goes to every real estate agent. What do real estate agents have? We have websites and we have our CRM on the listing alerts with the MLS. So pretty much after you put the house on the MLS, anyone who's searching for that type of house is notified about it within 24 to 48 hours, I would say. Is there anything else that we need to do besides place the house on the MLS, really? To let everyone know there's a house for sale. I mean, we used to have to place ads in the property pages because people would go to Denny's and they'd look through those things. But now everyone's just on their Redfin on their phone.
Yeah.
You don't have to place an ad. I mean, it comes naturally when you place it on the MLS, right?
But you
If
don't
the
want
house is
them to,
attractive, it's priced well, it's going to attract a lot of eyes.
you don't
but-
want them to think that's the only thing you're doing, though.
No, you don't. But I'm talking the reality is that's the majority. That's really the only thing you must do.
The great
Everything else
thing,
is kind of fluff that we do to get more listings or to get more clients.
the great
those
thing
things
about
important?
KW and the MLS is that it gets syndicated everywhere. So part of your listing presentation should be showing that it gets syndicated to like 350 sites, which means no matter where anyone is searching on the MLS, if your property is on the MLS, they're going to see it. They're going to know it's for sale.
That's it. That's it. And then the rest of it is just how does the property attract people,
Yeah.
right? Do we have the curb appeal? And you want to go out front with the seller and say, Mr. Seller, what 3 things can we do to improve the curb appeal of this home?
I always talk about getting them in the eyes of the buyer. You have to start seeing your home or any other home. Sometimes it's helpful to take them to the competition's home, so that they can get into the eyes of what the buyer's looking for and how they're comparing one home to another. Because that's really, people can be very attached to their own home and they are thinking of it more for them from the memories and all the, you know, the notches on the door where the kids grew and that sort of thing versus it being an investment that they're now going to make a lot of money on.
Well, they have to detach from that. And you can help with that in your conversations to see if they are attached and then detach them. Because one of the things that we do to improve the house that's cost effective and price effective on the other side is painting. So the first thing we're going to do is paint over those notches because you no longer own this house. This house needs to be depersonalized. Once the seller has made that decision that they want to sell this house, the best thing to do is to remove all personalization of that house so they can easier detach from it. And then they can transfer those things. You can make it on a piece of paper, transfer it to their new house. Guys, pick where you want your height rulers to be, and we can transfer. You know, whatever you can do to make it easy. But the seller needs to depersonalize too. That's one of the things we do with staging. You know, you want to go through, make sure all of their family photos come down. Although they're probably great, we want the buyer to focus on the house, not their family. Then my stagers go through my stagers are pretty, how can I say, comprehensive. They'll go through the book titles, anything religious, political, or anything where someone could raise an eyebrow, it's gone. You know, everything is as neutral and as possible. We can appeal to the most people as we possibly can. Right, that's the goal of prepping the house. But ultimately, your listing presentation, it should be a conversation. You should be having a lot of back and forth. And just like a buyer consultation, probably the less you talk, the better it's going.
Yeah.
The less you talk, the better it's going. So it's good that we get good at asking questions. When I first started, my listing presentation was a beautiful PowerPoint presentation. And I would go through it with I even had a little projector I would bring.
Oh, wow.
We'd go through the PowerPoint presentation. Guess how many listings that work to get listings? None. Nobody signed. Because when you're presenting in that manner, you're not connecting. You're just presenting. And if whatever it is that you're presenting isn't jiving with the person you're presenting it to, you're in deep duty. Because if you're reliant upon this presentation and it's not jiving with your audience, well, you're not walking out of there with a listing agreement, no matter how great your presentation might be.
So Mark, do you bring anything with you now? Do you bring a presentation or anything? Just paper?
Yeah.
So
now I bring a notebook, but it's now times are different because we have technology. You know, my resume is basically my website. So I tell buyers or I tell my listings, hey, you want to see how I do it? Go to my website. You can get a feel for my vibe. Look at the featured listings so you can see how the property tours look, how the virtual tours look, and how the professional photos look. And you can see the results of what they were listed for and what they sold for. And that way the people, you know, by the time you walk into the presentation, they should already know everything about you and everything about your company that's presented online.
Right.
So that way you're not sitting there selling you. You're already won that sale because you're in the living room. Now it's just a matter of how do you meet their needs to maximize their results. And if you can come to terms with that, then you're going to walk out of there with a signed listing agreement. But I recommend that you have an open mind when you walk into these presentations because you don't necessarily know exactly where the conversation is going to go. But it's important that you're very well prepared to tackle the instances or tackle the different points that the seller is going to need addressed from you at that time. The biggest things that you're going to need to have an agreement on is pricing strategy and commission rate. Okay. If you have an agreement on those things, the listing agreement can be signed.
Yeah.
But in order to get to that, you're going to need to answer some questions and be very, very confident and also offer good advice so that they can maximize their returns.
So for me, I go about it a little bit differently, you guys, and that's why it's so great that you're with Keller Williams and you get to learn from different agents, because there isn't just one right way of going about it. And so I actually do prepare a presentation packet. I don't necessarily go over it very much. In fact, I like to drop it off ahead of time. So like Mark said, they're reading up on you or researching you or learning about you ahead of time, so that during the actual listing presentation, if I have not toured the house, number one, I want to take a tour of the house and get to see it. And then I also just want to sit with them at the kitchen table and hear what their goals are, what their concerns are, and how we can work together to do that. So I do have, and as usual, I have some cheat sheets for you guys that I will email you, but I have a listing presentation packet, this Word document that recommends what to put in a presentation. I have also a listing checklist of pre-listing stuff to go through. And then I have a seller escrow checklist that's once you're in contract, what do you do? Just similar to that buyer escrow checklist that I've given to you guys. So I will definitely email that stuff to you guys. I use the Michael Lewis Marketing Suite presentation, and I have it branded and with all of my information. Their presentation is really long, and I've removed probably 50% of the pages, but I definitely focus on my value proposition in that presentation and what me and my team offer. And I want to remind you, you all have a team. Your team is you, as well as your escrow officer, your transaction coordinator, your inspectors. So everybody on your team plays a part in helping you help the seller reach their goal of getting their home sold for the highest price possible in the time that's most convenient to them. Not the quickest time, but the time that's most convenient. So yeah, I definitely, it sounds like Mark sends more of a digital, and especially with COVID, it's better if we don't use a lot of paper and you can have PDFs. I have a PDF of my presentation that I can send. The pages that change every time is the picture page. I always try to take a picture of the property, the front of the property ahead of time, just one picture, so that goes in the presentation. Sometimes you can get a decent picture off of Google Maps, but if not, just swing by and take a picture. So that page changes. And then I also add to the presentation the information that's on record about their property. So I'll add what's it called on the MLS? What's the realist? I'll add the realist pages because that's public record, and most sellers like to see what's public record about their property. So I add those pages too. And then also, if you can pull the assessor's info, I'll add the assessor's information in there as well. And so anyways, I have a checklist of what I add. And then again, kind of like Mark's saying, I like to give that information ahead of time so that when I get there, we can just focus on questions, concerns. The other thing that's really important that I do during a listing presentation is I bring blank calendars with me. So this month is September, next month is October, next month after that's November. I usually bring 3 months of calendars, and I ask them, well, when do you want to have this done? When do you want the sale completed by? And if they say end of November, we want to spend last Thanksgiving here in the home, and then we want to move, then I'm marking sale by December 1st or November 30th, whatever. And I'm counting back 30 days and saying, okay, we need to be in contract by this day. And then I'm going backwards again on the blank calendar and saying, so then we're going to need to spend, let's just say there's not a lot of major remodeling that needs to happen. Let's just say this property is in good shape. I'm saying we need about 2 weeks to get inspections done, get cleanup done, get photography done, so that we're ready to go on the MLS by this date. So it's really helpful for them. This has been a game changer for me when I started bringing blank calendars. It's really helpful for you to walk backwards with them on time frames so that they realize, okay, so in order for us to get started and for you to reach your goal by the date you want it reached by, I'd love to get ready, go to work for you and get this started. So we just need to sign a little bit of paperwork to make this happen. I've just asked them to sign a contract with me. Okay. So if you do it that way, you say, great, in order for me to get started, let's just do a little bit of paperwork and then I can get my inspectors out here. And then you tell them the inspectors are already booked out a couple weeks ahead. So we've got to get on their calendars too. The photographers are booked out and they realize that they need to get going sooner than later. Does that make sense to everybody?
Create a little bit of urgency, absolutely.
You guys are super duper quiet today. Thank you for the thumbs up. It's Mark and I talking to each other a little bit today.
Sorry,
So-
I'm putting together an offer, so I'm listening.
Awesome. Okay. So those, again, if we can do all the value proposition, the marketing that you're going to do, all of that kind of ahead of time, then you're sitting down and you're looking at comps together, you're discussing price, you're discussing concerns, you're discussing blank calendar timelines, and then you're getting some paperwork signed. Another trick that I do during the listing presentation, I always bring the contract with me and it's pretty much filled out except price. And I'll say to them, okay, let me just get this contract ready to go here. And I hand them a blank sheet of paper and I ask them, can you, while I'm working on this and it's already done, I need like 30 seconds to just make sure if I'm tweaking something. But I'll say to them, can you guys please make a list of everything you want to make sure I include on the property flyer? The reason I do that is they start putting pen to paper. They're more likely to sign your contract psychologically if you've got them writing stuff down on pen to paper first. It's a little trick. If you can get them to sign something, they're more likely to just slide the pen over and sign your contract next. So it gets them engaged in the process. They start writing down for sure. They want the cedar closets listed on the property flyer, whatever they want to make sure they can start writing down items included, items excluded, that sort of thing. And so it gets them thinking about the process and gets them involved. And then while they're doing that, you're adding the price into the listing agreement. And then you can flip it around, go over it with them quickly. Mark, I don't know, do you show them how to go over a listing agreement during transaction one? Do you do that part?
We already went through the listing agreement.
We went over filling it out. Do you ever go over how to have your client sign it?
I don't think we specifically went through
Okay.
that.
All right. And I know
But
some
normally it's
nowadays,
like, here's a pen.
yeah.
DocuSign this is usually how that
Yeah,
goes.
it's pretty easy. Nowadays, I know you even DocuSign it to people, which is the other thing. So, just those are just a few things for me. Is the blank calendars is really important. Oh, another thing that I do is I may bring a gift with me. And I usually say, if I've never set foot in their door before, I say to them at the threshold, my mom always taught me to never show up empty-handed, and I'll bring flowers or I'll bring a smoke detector or carbon combo as just a realtor gift. It's just showing my professionalism and my respect. And so that's the kind of thing I'll do as well, just to kind of, show off a little bit, show that I'm respectful. And I also recommend that you sit at the kitchen table. If they try to get you to sit on the couch, it's too casual. It's really hard to look at paperwork back and forth. And so you say to them, I have some things I'd like to lay out and show you. And you just start walking towards the kitchen or the dining room. Could we please go sit at a table? And you just walk that way. I know there's different agents do it differently, where they'll say, I'm going to walk through the house as if I were a buyer, and you guys sit here and I'll come back with a list. Some people do it that way. My comfort level was always to have them walk with me, especially it was my first time in the home, because they don't trust me yet. So I don't think they're necessarily going to let me walk through their house without them. So
Guys, and you missed the most critical part. The most critical part is your opportunity to build rapport.
Yep.
You have to get them to like you. Number one, if people don't like you, they won't do business with you.
Yeah.
So step one, arrive at the property, look clean, professional, and greet your clients.
Yeah.
Before you sit down, that's why I bring my notebook. Okay, guys, first thing let's do, why don't you guys tour me around the house and show me what we're working with? and then I let them lead a property tour around the house, and I take copious notes.
Yeah, show me as if I was a buyer. Show me what you want to
So
show me as if I
ultimately,
was a buyer.
I'm really looking, I've seen 1,000 houses. I already know what I'm looking for. I'm really looking for points to build rapport more than anything. I'm looking for golf clubs. I'm looking at their family pictures on the wall so we can talk about things they like to do. I'm looking for sports memorabilia. If I see a sports memorabilia, I'm a sports guy, so I know I'll be able to connect with the person on that level. You know, whatever it is that you may find that would help you connect with your prospect. So step one would be to walk through the property and make sure that you have a clear understanding of your basics of what you're working with, and you have a few talking points so you can break the ice and build that rapport so you can win over their favor and their affinity, if you will. If you get them to like you, the chances of walking out with businesses is great. If they don't like you, it's 0. So keep that in mind. You have to make friends. Then absolutely sit down at a place, dinner table or formal dining table is the best place, because you need to sit there and take more notes for your discussion. And then in the event you want to show them something, or you have to pull out your laptop and show them things, that might have to happen as well. So it's a convenient place to do that at the kitchen table. The first thing that I do is just basically I start with the question asking. And it's important for you to understand what's important. It's important for us to know what's important to them, right? And I still stole this line from Rick Keehan, and it works very well to this day. And it's just sit down and say, hey, folks, I really can't be the answer to your prayers if I have no idea what you're praying for. So let's have a discussion, and let's find out what's most important to you with regards to the sale of your home. And then I just start taking bullet point notes that I know things that I need to address. If they're going to talk about price, I write it down. They talk about commission, I write it down. Very similarly to what we did in the beginning of our discussion today. They mentioned something, I write it down. And I kind of go over all the hot points. Now, will they mention all the most important points? Not always. So it's important that you understand what's missing from their initial dialogue of what's important to them. So they'll list what's important to them, you list it out. If there's anything missing, like pricing, commission, how to show the home, how to prepare the home, things of that nature, if they didn't bring it up, then you bring it up. And then just simply address every point that you talked about. Once you have an understanding, and they have an understanding that you're competent and credible to solve their problems, then you can go to close for the listing. And it's very easy. You put the piece of paper and the pen in front of them if they're ready. If you're ready to make a move, let's make that move. Please sign the listing agreement. It'll get me started in preparing and marketing your home for sale. We want to get that signed as soon as possible. If they give you any reason or hesitation, that's okay. It's called sales. Okay. You have to identify their objections, and then first you identify the objections, then you isolate their objection as being that's the only thing, and then you overcome the objection and close again. Okay, so if it's a matter of you don't have an agreement on commission, Mr. Seller, if we make an agreement on commission, will you be ready to sign the listing agreement right now? And if he says yes, Kevin, this is the only thing. I understand your marketing plan, and I'm really happy to get this thing going. If we can come to an agreement on commission, you can have the listing, and then negotiate. Oh, differentiate. What do you do that others don't do? Mr. Seller, I can appreciate you negotiating commission. Is there something that you've seen to warrant this question? Well, Redfin offers a 1% commission. Well, how do you overcome working with Redfin? Well, I can appreciate, Mr. Seller, that you have a concern, because it is real money and it's significant. So it's important that you're comfortable with what we're proposing and you're comfortable with what you're going to pay me. Now, please understand that when working with a company like Redfin, you don't necessarily get an agent that's motivated and involved in the actual results that come along with the sale of your house. That Redfin agent gets a salary. He gets the same salary whether he sells your house or he doesn't sell your house. Whether he answers the phone when somebody calls or he doesn't answer the phone when somebody calls. So that's what you're hiring at that level. At my level, these are the systems that I have in place so that when people call, we're ready to answer. We're ready to engage. We're ready to promote your property at every step of the way. People call in, who answers the phone? A $5 to $10 an hour assistant, or is it the actual listing agent who has the actual tools to be able to negotiate and to convince the people to take necessary actions to move your transaction forward? Who do you want to hire, Mr. Seller? Who do you think is going to give you the best result? Because at the end of the day, a lackluster result could result in a 5, 6, 7% hit to the value of your home relative to having it represented by an agent who really cares, right? Sometimes the most motivated buyer calls at 7:30 p.m. If your agent's not there to answer that call, you're going to lose. The Redfin agents don't answer the phone messages. Seller.
We just have a couple minutes left. I wonder if you guys, Mark and I have both talked a lot today about a really important topic. And you guys are really new to this part of the business. I'm just curious if there's questions that are coming up for you and that sort of thing.
This is good info. I think once I start planning my own presentation, I might have more questions that come up, but this is
Okay.
great.
And then Kiko, do you guys on your team, do you have a presentation that you then get to borrow and kind of make your own, or how does that work?
We do, but we're in the process of revamping it.
Okay, awesome. So I would also recommend that you practice before the game and not in the game. And so I would practice your presentation ahead of time. For me, when I first started in real estate, I practiced on my mother-in-law. I remember being at her kitchen table and I said, you know, be hard on me, be tough on me. This is the way I'm going to get better. And I remember one time I said something and I was like, wait, time out. I don't like the way I said that, rewind. And she let me say it again. And I just totally got to practice. And I practiced on my best friend and her husband. So I'm saying that because I practiced on people other than other realtors. And here's why. When you practice with other realtors, which is fine, you can do that too. When they're watching you, they're thinking about how they would do it. Okay. So they're watching, but they're like, oh, I would do it this way. I would do it. When you practice on a consumer, they're going to give you consumer feedback, not realtor feedback. And they're also going to become your cheerleaders. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, Laura is taking this so seriously. And they start talking about you and becoming your cheerleader out there. You should work with Laura. She works really hard on her real estate career and she's amazing. So you start developing cheerleaders. So I would highly recommend practice on a couple of friends in real estate community, but practice on a couple of friends outside of our office too. So Kiko and Mika, practice on each other, but then don't practice on somebody else too. It's going to be way better feedback for you.
Okay, great idea. Thank you.
What else? What other questions?
How would you handle a situation where a client is asking you to do something unethical?
Don't do it. What is it? What do they want to do?
Can you give us a little more specific?
Oh, no, it was just a general question. I mean, I've, been to some open houses where the owner is, drunk and you're trying to get them out of there, or, you know what I mean? Just,
Wow.
Yeah, the best thing you can do in your business is be willing to walk away. You are your own business owner. And Teresa, I think I know which client you're talking about. And yeah, we have some times where we have some pretty rough clients, and the longer you are in the business, and the more business you get, the easier it gets to let go of those, because you want to focus on the best people. And the more you focus on the best people, the more you're going to get more of those. Right. And so I don't know, Mark, what else you want to add, because it's definitely a bilateral contract. And I had a seller a few years back that was a drunk too, and she would get drunk at night and she'd get drunk and then berate me, like, and send these emails that were so long of everything I was doing horribly wrong. And I got warned by other agents. I wasn't the first agent who signed with her, and I got
What
warned
was
by
her-
others, be
I
careful.
think I may
And
have had
then,
her too.
and then when I said, great, it sounds like I am not the right agent for you. Let's cancel. Then she refused to cancel the contract. So then the
Oh my
office
gosh.
manager and the broker, this was back in my Coldwell Banker days, they had to get involved because it's not, I can't just cancel. We both have to agree to cancel. It's a bilateral contract. So and finally, like, I had keys for her house, and we made her come to the office and pick up the keys so she couldn't accuse me of stealing them and all this crap. She was a mess, you know?
Yeah.
I had someone like that too. She called after
sucked
the
up a lot of my
pictures were
time.
posted and just yelling in my
Yeah.
voicemail. I just went, I grabbed the listing contract, put it in a folder, drove to her house, took my sign, ripped it up in front of her and said, goodbye.
Yeah. So
Because you
I
are no
know
longer
that,
listed by Mark Bernstein or Keller Williams. I don't
Yeah.
recommend calling any other Keller Williams agents wherever else I'm shit.
yeah.
Right.
But you don't yell at me on the phone. I
Just-
can understand if you're not happy with something, you can tell me.
Yeah.
And more than likely, dude, if you don't like the pictures, I have no problem paying for a different photographer to take you pictures. It's fine. It's not the end of the world. But if someone calls, and especially if they're bad, of course I want good pictures too, right?
Yeah.
But if they're bad, right? But you don't yell. I don't tolerate.
Yeah, if you're,
Yeah.
and that's the great thing about being a part of a supportive office, is that you've got Mark as the broker and other people that you can run scenarios by and go, hey, this is happening. Because more than likely, we've all faced something similar. But be willing to stand up for yourself and walk away. You
Yeah,
know,
that same person called me 2 years later and said, I made a huge mistake. She said I was the best one that went through there. And then she'd like to hire me again. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. Click.
I got referred that same person 2 years later by another agent, and I laughed and I said, oh, trust me, she does not want to work with me.
No.
I just laughed. I was like, you're gonna have to find someone else to refer this business to. And it was she had a distant relative that was a KW agent that contacted me. This was in Santa Cruz, so my name came up. And I just laughed and I said, so I tried to sell her house a couple of years ago, and trust me, she will never work with me again, nor will I ever. He laughed. He's like, yeah, she's my relative. I know she's like that. And I was like, you're going to have to find someone else.
Yeah, the other one that I've come across is just sometimes people are unfortunately racist. And if someone has any indication that they're not going to objectively look at the offers, I can't do that. I don't need that karma, and I don't need that legal ramifications on top of that either. But and then ethically, like morally, it's just not right in my mind. So if people aren't on the same level as you with regards to that, it's best to just let them go. Let them go. There's a lot of business out there, guys. There's so much that you don't need to compromise yourself. You don't need to compromise your ethics, and you don't need to definitely compromise fair housing laws. If
And then
anyone asks you to violate those, by all means, do
Yeah.
not.
In a law of abundance, there's enough business out there for you, and there's the right realtor for every person out there. And you don't have to be the right realtor for every person. There's somebody else out there that will fit just fine with that crazy person. Other questions?
Thank you.
Oh, I guess we're out of time, kind of. Is there one last question?
Yeah,
Anybody have
we are at
anything
time. I gotta
else?
jump.
You got to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, I hope you guys will come to my class this afternoon at 1 o'clock. I'm teaching a class on called The Fortunes in the Follow-Up. It's on lead generation and lead follow-up and being very systematic about it. It's one of my favoriteest classes that I teach. And so I hope at 1 o'clock you guys can all join me on Zoom for that class. Okay?
Thank you.
Tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.